with Marcie Sclove and Chuck Cooper and Marita and Peter Blood. And just to have a brief introduction, I'm going to share this introduction with Jean. First, just to say Marcie is the former president of the League of Women Voters, and she's now the chair of the League's Racial Justice Task Force. And many of you know her as the founder and the host of Going Deeper, sharing deep and authentic conversations with interesting people and interviewing elders and tell their stories in the Black community about amazing lives and insight into the town. And so we're really pleased to have Marcie on this roundtable. And Jean, you can introduce Chuck.
Yes, so Chuck Cooper, work with Citizens for Amity Now, Racial Amity Now, is definitely a spiritual leader in the Baha'i community, or at least to me, a mentor. I have been attending many of the men's group that he currently, he's part of the development team there. And I've watched in myself and other men as we grow spiritually with Chuck Cooper's mentorship.
Good, and Marita, people have got some introduction to you, nothing about your rich and fabulous life and work, but Peter Blood is the co-chair of the Interfaith Opportunities Network and really a fabulous leader who's able to organize a lot of events, and the Interfaith Opportunities Network itself for Hampshire County is seeking to strengthen the bonds of respect and understanding across each other's faith traditions. And we're inspired by our shared concerns for peace and justice on earth. And Peter, with his wife, Annie Patterson, who we just heard sing that wonderful song, use folk music in the service of social justice. And they're the creators of that really wonderful popular songbook, Rise Up Singing. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to them, and I'm going to spotlight each of them. And so, I have to unspotlight Alicia. My apologies. Thank you so much, both of you, for your vision.
So the question on the table, and certainly the chat rooms are open as people are also reflecting, is what does race amity mean to you and for racial justice? So we'll have Chuck, Marcie, Peter Blood, Marita speak on these, and we also certainly encourage members of the to start posting any relevant answers to this question. What does race amity mean to you and to racial justice? And the chat room is live. Shall we say, Marcie, since you seem like you are unmuted, would you like to go first?
Sure, I always like to go first because I get a little nervous, and this way I get to just not sit in my nervousness. I am so moved to be here today. This has just been beautiful. And yeah, so giving thought to what does racial amity mean to me? During this week, I had the opportunity to participate in a Zoom online kind of workshop revolving around a film called The Wisdom of Trauma. And Gabor Mate is a really amazing, thoughtful person who this film illustrates his work around addiction and trauma. And he also has a really amazing critique about racial justice and also capitalism. And, you know, it goes on and on. But one of the takeaways for me from the film and from what I've been thinking about in the context of amity in general is self-amity and the sense of what it takes to really be truly a friend to oneself. And that often requires a lot of healing. I think a lot of us walking through our lives, if we don't carry what we think of as trauma, we definitely carry wounds. And I really feel like a big part of justice work is working internally on our own wounds and how to be a very good friend to oneself, how to love oneself, how to feel that trust and unity within oneself. So I wanted to share that as an aspect of what amity means to me. It starts within, and then, of course, it goes out into one's family, one's community, one's sense of safe, racial or whatever other identifications one makes. And then how do you cross bridges into other peoples that might not be your comfort zone, or you might not have that same familiarity. And so I love always when Ray used to show some version of that trailer that we watched, reminding us all about the ways all through our history in this country, there was cooperation, there was amity and friendship and trust and unity amongst people trying to work toward justice. That isn't a new concept, that always existed. And it doesn't get shined upon the same way. And I also, with great respect for Jean, I wanted to share something about the notion of kumbaya, because I heard an interview that Vincent Harding did with Krista Tippett. And Vincent Harding, for those who don't know, was a wonderful scholar and a wonderful civil rights activist. He was a speechwriter for Martin Luther King Jr. and was a clergyman in the Mennonite church and did many, many things that were amazing toward justice and civil rights. And in this interview that I heard him speak about this gathering that took place the night before a very big civil rights action was going to happen. And it was after the 3 young people had been killed, the 2 whites and the Black young people who had been killed. And in the room, as he described it, and it really touched me so much, it has stayed with me for, I must have heard that 2 or 3 years ago. In the room were a lot of young white people from the North who had come down for these actions, these racial civil rights actions, as well as the local people, the Black people in the community, etc. And Vincent talked about, they took a moment to let everyone in the room know that a lot of really scary stuff had just happened. And anybody who wanted to get up and leave would not have any shame put upon them, that they were respected for coming and trying to do this work, but that if they didn't want to continue on, now would be the time for them to leave. And in that moment, they sang Kumbaya. So it's not, it's not just a fluffy, superficial, let's all feel good kind of song. In this historical moment that he recreated in the interview, I now have a very deep appreciation for how that song had meaning and importance, and how that event was another example of what we saw in the trailer, whites and Blacks together in cooperation, working toward racial justice and civil rights. So I just wanted to say that. And then finally, I think the second part of the question is about action. And my whole life, I have always believed that whatever I think I want to have happen, my first go-to is about making relationships and how important it is to make relationships. And that meant for me, making relationships with people of color, with people who were from India, with people from wherever I was living, etc. But I've started to change that. Yes, we need to make relationships, but I really now am very gung-ho about changing institutions and structural obstacles to racial amity and structural obstacles to justice. So I'm very gung-ho about how do we do that and what is involved for white people to get out of their comfort zone to let that happen. And honestly, and I am now just speaking for myself, I am not representing the League of Women Voters of Amherst, I'm just speaking for myself. But I think we have such an opportunity with this amazing, thoughtful, brilliant, professional proposal from the Community Safety Working Group. I think we have an opportunity here to really make structural change and institutional change within Amherst. And my hope and my prayer is that today and Juneteenth and all of these opportunities we have to talk with each other, you know, on Zoom, but in some kind of an intimate way, that we have this this hope and this vision to work together toward institutional and structural change. So I guess that's what I wanted to say. Thank you so much for letting me go first.
Awesome.
We have to keep our timing in mind too as we go forward.
Yes. And of course, I'll remind everyone that the chat is live. And if it's not, please let me know. But I do believe it's live. So feel free to also try to answer the question as our 4 speakers are answering it. And I am absolutely, Marcie, okay with singing Kumbaya with you if the opportunity ever comes. But the old Jean would have questioned Race Amity as a Kumbaya holding event.
Yeah.
But so what I heard from you was it starts within and then it spreads to other people. And in thinking about your work with in terms of social justice, again, you put emphasis on relationship. So again, that connection on one-on-one in order to actually have impact. So I see whoever would like to go next. Chuck looks like he's excited to go next.
Shall I go, Jean?
Go ahead, and Peter.
Okay. So to me, race amity is about something the prophets from all the different traditions, Buddhism, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, have said all along, Baha'i, of course, which is that when we live race amity, we're living as if the kingdom of heaven was already here among us, which means that we treat every single person, every adult, every child, each undocumented immigrant, each person of whatever color, Black, brown, indigenous person, with the dignity and the respect and the honor that they deserve. Now, prophets have always stood for that, but as Jesus said, true prophets tend to get killed, whereas the false prophets are eating grapes with the fat cats down in Washington or something like that. And why is it that true prophets constantly be killed? And that's because it's a threat to the structure of empire to live into this way of being where all are treated with total respect. And that's why so many prophets have either been imprisoned or killed over the centuries, and why we have often to make a very hard choice to stand this way, because sometimes it means giving up everything, as happened to those 3 civil rights workers. And in the past, the idea of freedom and justice for all this country was founded on was unfortunately a lie. It was a lie because it only included certain people. Really, it only included men, not women. It only included whites. It certainly didn't include indigenous people or slaves who were only a footnote in the Constitution and the founders' discussions. But the reality is a new kind. It used to be the lie was just everybody really is white, and the indigenous people aren't even really here. We don't even have to talk about them hardly. But there's a new kind of lie happening. And the new kind of lie I would call false race amity or race amity pretense. You know, unfortunately, a lot of state legislatures are trying to pass laws that say it's illegal to teach the truth about the history of this country. If you're a teacher, in many states, you could be thrown in jail for teaching the truth about the history of this country. And that's the part of the false race amity. When you have somebody come up to you and say, I don't see race, that's the kind of false race amity. the kind of lies of race amity, because the reality is we still have many, many, many wounds to be fixed, many things to be repaired before we can have true race amity. There's a slogan that's often said at demonstrations, which actually I don't always like that slogan, but one of them is no justice, no peace. And that's a slogan that I can go with 100%. And that's not a threat. Some people see that as a threat. If you don't bring us justice, we're going to bring war. No, that's simply stating the truth, which is you cannot have race amity. You cannot have true peace among peoples until there's justice. And since we still have systemic racism in this country, and we still have systemic sectarianism, where it says that only Christianity really counts in this country, those kind of lies are basically upholding empire. And to have true amity, we have to disestablish empire. We have to untangle all the injustices that have been built over 400 years here. And so I hope all of us can join together, of different races, of different faiths, right here in Amherst and the surrounding communities, to disestablish racism from our community and make it the true kind of race amity, not the fake kind that comes bitterly off the mouths of people sometimes who go by our Black Lives Matter vigil, and they spit at you, all lives matter, like it's a threat or something like that. No, when you spit it out like a curse, you're saying all lives don't really matter.
My God.
Only certain kinds do.
Okay, awesome. So awesome. So what I'm hearing from you is race amity is a process. It's not just having perhaps a day is not enough. We're not there yet, and there's more action to be done to get us there. Awesome. So that said, and of course we have some people here who've spoken. Put some great proposal, Brianna and Elisha, highlighting some of the work that they're doing to get us to that vision. And at the same time, I think we all appreciate having this space that we can celebrate some of what's been done and the spirit behind it. That said, I'd like to give Marita Banda. I know Chuck is looking forward to talk, but Marita Banda, I'll give you a chance to say a few words.
Yeah, I think I said a lot of what I need to say earlier, and I just want to appreciate everyone's love for my grandfather as well, and for this day. I think it's very powerful, and like he said, we're one human family. You got to love everybody. So I just want to, looking at the time, I just want to say this poem that was, kind of on my mind, that I wrote a while ago, that has to do with race amity and, loving everybody. So with that said, there's no title. And now for our featured presentation, brought to you by Four Little Girls, Malcolm, Martin, Tubman, Parks, Greensboro, Angelo, and the list goes on and on, reminding us to lift every voice and remember the pain and suffering, the hardships which carried soft bodies over a middle passage, bodies tossing themselves over, preferring to go home back to Africa and be. Well, too many bodies made it to the shore. Too many babies were born into darkness with no limbs and no dreams, handicapped from the beginning, not even knowing their end. Yet they still remember to lift every voice and the North Star heard them and carried them on railroads, no railings to hold on to, only souls to belong to. Spiritually singing their way to what they thought was what was meant to be, but what really was free doom. But we will not stop singing till earth and heaven ring. We sing because we are happy. We sing because we are free from slavery. Racism still resides in the hearts of some. They hold the key to our chains. They hold that ever-cracking whip over our heads. Don't they understand that we have put sweat and blood into building bridges over troubled water, so we all may cross, and let our differences be the reason for our friendships. So we all may cross, and let our differences be the reason for our friendships. We are running in circles, holding on to the disease that paralyzes our existence. A petrified forest, our roots run so deep, holding on to the earth, afraid to let go and breathe. And we must remember to lift every voice in, to lift every voice in, to lift all our voices and sing. Thank you.
Wow, that is beautiful. Thank you.
Welcome. I just think that it's important to realize that we all have to come together. I think that's been repeated throughout this discussion. And I think that it's great that our community is dedicated to that. And, within the Baha'i faith, we say one human family gets repeated over and over. And I truly believe in that.
Thank you. So there is a question which perhaps Brianna Owen and Alicia Walker might be able to address in the chat. Someone is asking if there is a sample letter or paragraph that someone is Christina Shabai. If there is a sample letter or paragraph that we can use to approach our town representatives, it would be helpful for anyone that does not have all the information, but wants to support the initiative presented by the safety committee. And with that said, and of course, we also have someone, Chad F. said, it's almost like there's a big ball of love. I have a choice to step into it. I have all kinds of different people in my life. Each deserves I step into that ball before relating to them.
John, this is Mary Elliott.
Yes.
I'd like very much to hear from a very dear friend that Ray loves so much. His name is Charles Cooper.
Oh, yes. You will definitely hear from Charles Cooper. I just wanted to make sure that some folks' questions get answered. But so that said, I'm gonna trust that Brianna will convey some information on the chat. But Chuck, by popular demand, you have been requested.
Oh, Mary, God bless you. I tell you, it was good to hear from you. I'm glad to see you're here today. And oh my God, I'm first of all, it's wonderful to be here, and it really is. And thank everybody here. And it's also a real pleasure to be part of this roundtable with Marcie and Peter and Marita, Martia. Thank you all. And I'm still digesting your poem, Marita. I just like wham, it just came right in. And I just love the statement you made about the differences being the reason for our friendship. That is so beautiful. That is just so beautiful. And it really touches a lot of what race amity actually means to me. And oftentimes in the Koran meeting, good Ray Elliott would often emphasize about how much this really was about love, and friendship, and looking at our differences as being a means of growing with each other as human beings. And it's just such a powerful way to approach, relationships. And as a white guy born into and feeling this unconscious white supremacy, both an attitude and an insensitivity towards other people that I didn't really know I even had. Race amity gives me a vehicle to rise above that and to really take the benefit of what you said in your beautiful poem, let our differences be the reason for our friendship. So I thank you so much for that poem. That was so beautiful, so very beautiful. And Marcie, what you said about it starts with the self, it sure does, and that's really where it works. And from there, you come out and you start to reach out to others. And race amity offers a richness in life that just is not available otherwise. It helps us to get out of our box of what is familiar with ourselves, and we get to learn from each other, and that's a really beautiful thing. And again, as Ray would say, look for the beauty in people. And that's what Race Amity really does. And, you know, and as far as justice goes, you know, when I hear what the Community Safety Working Group is doing and what Marita Shabazz speaks about in his life and his story and what he's teaching, and everything the Amherst Town Council is standing for, you know, and all the work of the Interfaith group, that gives me faith that there really is a spirit in our community that's making a change, you know, that's building this sense of friendship, genuine friendship with each other, and that we all can benefit from it. It's just very, very moving. You know, I'd like to just make a final statement because we are running late. So let me close. And this is from the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is in the United States. And it says, to create a just society begins with the recognition of the fundamental truth that humanity is one. And we've talked about this throughout the day today. But it's not simply to believe this in our hearts. That's not enough. You know, and he goes on to say, we must act in all aspects of our lives. And Marcie, this is what you were addressing too. You know, it's one thing to protest against particular forms of injustice. It's far more profound to challenge, to create a new framework for justice. And it must be in our institutions and in our way of life. And primarily, again, it begins in our heart. So thank you all for sharing your hearts with all of us today. Thank you.
Awesome.
So Jean, I'll say a few words. Thanks so much for this panel, each of you. Marita, that poem moved us beyond tears, joy. It was just, and Marcie, your insight into the fact that it is about our internal change before we can get engaged in external change. I mean, that's so important. It's internal work we have to do. And Peter, your insight that all faith traditions and even ethical traditions have recognized the oneness of humankind, and that isn't just a slogan, but it leads to people being persecuted and killed. 20,000 early believers in the Baha'i faith were killed because of their belief of oneness and their belief in this change. And the whole concept of race amity ultimately is about recognizing that we have a moral imperative to act, to change the structures that are unjust. And until we do, amity has to be a force to help that change. And ultimately, then it will bring about the true amity, which is based on not hierarchy and power and oppression, but real relationships of integrity and trust and love. But that has to happen. And so this is what, you know, when we hear Annie's song, if not now, it is now.